In October 1977, Agnès Le Roux, a lively 29-year-old heiress, vanished from the French Riviera and left her family and friends searching for answers. The investigation quickly focused on her lover, Jean-Maurice Agnelet, who had a complicated relationship with her. As police followed misleading clues, they hit dead ends and suspicions grew about local mafias known for their influence in the area. Rumors suggested that Agnès' disappearance might be linked to these dangerous connections, and it became more like a Hollywood movie. With each twist, the truth seemed more challenging to find. What really happened to Agnès Le Roux? Would anyone reveal the secrets hidden under the glamorous surface of the Riviera? Let's jump right into it. In the early 60s, Nice was an incredible place on the French Riviera, and right at its center was the Palais de la Méditerranée. This grand building was a lively spot with its bright white and grand front. Built in the late 20s, it was famous for its busy casino, which attracted glamorous visitors from all over. Henri Le Roux and his wife, Renée Le Roux, owned half of this vibrant place. But their busy social lives meant they spent little time with their 4 children. Although they owned a piece of this lively paradise, their home often felt more like a backdrop, as they were constantly preoccupied with business and social duties. While the Palais was filled with laughter and chatter, the Le Roux household was strangely quiet. Family dinners were rare, and they relied on tutors and nurses to raise their kids, which created a bit of distance between them, and the kids often felt a little disconnected from their parents. When Henri passed away in 1967, Renée bravely took over the business. Leading a place like the Palais was tough, especially as a woman in a male-dominated world, but she was determined. Her 3 children, that included Patricia, Christine, and Jean-Charles, were united around her, and they helped her keep the family business running. As the 70s rolled in, Nice began to change. The city became a hotbed of corruption, with the mafia exerting a strong influence. Jacques Médecin, the mayor at the time, had big dreams of turning Nice into a French Las Vegas. He surrounded himself with avaricious entrepreneurs who wanted to buy up the seafront and were dreaming of the Palais for redevelopment. Despite the chaos around them, the Le Roux family fought to protect their beloved Palais. They poured their hearts into keeping it alive and faced challenges together. This struggle wasn't just about business, but it also showed the strong ties within their family. Love, ambition, and a shared dream of preserving their legacy kept them united during the changing tides of their city. The Palais de la Méditerranée was not just a building, it stood for their strength and togetherness in changing dynamics. Renée had also a 4th daughter named Agnès Le Roux. She was born on September 14, 1948, and by 1977, at 29 years old, she had her own vision for life that didn't include the family casino. She famously stated, "I won't be working in the casino because I'm not interested in that field. I could have inherited a brothel, but that wouldn't make me want to become a pimp. I want to do something else with my life." Agnès dreamed of independence and travel, and her mind focused on exploring the world. After marrying Jean-Pierre Hennequet, the couple moved to Côte d'Ivoire in 1970, where Agnès discovered her love for local crafts and started selling them. Jean-Pierre described her as full of love and generosity, very creative and joyful. He also noted her rebellious spirit and sensitivity, which made her all the more attractive. In 1976, after her divorce, Agnès moved to Monaco and opened an import-export boutique. Those who knew Agnès described her as a lively and stubborn woman with a unique taste for life. According to her sister Catherine, she even chose her water as carefully as some choose wine. Her artistic skill was evident in everything she did, and her sisters spoke fondly of her vibrant personality. Patricia remembered her as lively, joyful, and very generous. Her brother Jean-Charles echoed this, saying she was full of love and generosity, and highlighting their close bond. In a family focused on the casino business, Agnès dreamed of a different life. At this point in her life, Agnès Le Roux became close to Jean-Maurice Agnelet, often referred to as Maurice. He was not just a lawyer, but also a family friend who had previously worked with Agnès' mother, Renée. Maurice played a pivotal role in Agnès' divorce, and as their connection deepened, they began dating even before her marriage had officially ended. He had also made unwanted advances toward her sisters, Catherine and Patricia, and even asked their mother, Renée, for a job at the Palais de la Méditerranée, but was turned down each time. It was only through Agnès that he finally got into the family, which led to their unhealthy relationship. As she faced her feelings for Maurice, the struggles they faced only increased her loneliness and fragility. Witnesses observed that Agnès seemed entirely captivated by Maurice. She would often quote him saying, "As Maurice says," which highlighted how much influence he had over her. Agnès became almost addicted to him, unable to break free from his hold. However, this love came at a significant cost. She referred to him as a chameleon, a creature that changes its colors based on its surroundings, and emphasized her struggle to grasp who he really was. Maurice never considered marrying her, which caused Agnès immense heartache. Despite her awareness of being manipulated, she remained obsessed and even took on the financial burden of their relationship, which included paying for everything. Attitude of Maurice towards Agnès was often dismissive. He openly referred to her as "my crust," which suggested that she was merely a source of income for him. His disrespect was shown by how he affectionately called another mistress, Françoise, Lausseure, Mamie. When she asked if he called all his other lovers by the same name, he laughed and pointed out that Agnès was just his wallet. Françoise was the pivotal figure who would ultimately play a significant role in saving Agnelet from arrest later in the case. This will later be revealed in the video. As a sensitive young woman with depressive tendencies, Agnès found her relationship with Maurice increasingly troubling. Isolated from her family due to past betrayals, she felt profoundly alone. Desperate for connection, she poured her feelings into letters to Maurice, expressing her longing and despair. "I want you. I wait for you. I hope for you." Agnès' life took a dark turn on October 4, 1977, when she attempted suicide for the first time. Maurice was notified, but his response was surprisingly careless. After her hospitalization, Agnès was shocked to discover bruises covering her body. Confused and struggling to recall events, she mentioned being forced to take pills. A roommate from the hospital later noted that Agnès seemed terrified, which indicated how deep her distress ran. Tragically, 2 days later, she attempted suicide again. Maurice had been called for help, but his concern was weirdly minimal. This sequence of events raised troubling questions about the motivations of Maurice and concern for Agnès' well-being. His actions and lack of interest suggested a disturbing indifference to her struggles. Agnès was trapped in a problematic mix of love and manipulation, which held on to Maurice even though he caused her pain. As she dealt with these intense feelings, the struggles in their relationship made her feel even more alone and vulnerable. Jean-Maurice Agnelet was a charming yet self-absorbed man and known for his attractive nature. Born on February 10, 1938 in Monaco, he grew up in a struggling family where strict parenting was a source to create tension. The tragic suicide of his older brother, Gérard, in 1961 left a lasting impact on him and led to an emotional shell to cope with his upbringing. At 20, Maurice worked as a supervisor at a school where he met his first love, Annie Letus. To avoid military service, he married her, and they had 3 sons. By 1962, despite lacking skills, he became a lawyer in Nice and attracted clients by not charging fees. In the late 1960s, Maurice became fascinated with the Le Roux family, seeking to insert himself into their lives. This obsession led to a complicated relationship with Agnès, sparking events that would have significant consequences for both. Agnès Le Roux found herself in a tense family situation as her mother, Renée, faced constant pressure from Jean-Dominique Frattoni, the manager of the Roule Casino. Frattoni was determined to take control of the Palais de la Méditerranée, and he sought the help of Jean-Maurice Agnelet. On June 30th, 1977, there was a tense atmosphere at the Palais de la Méditerranée. This luxurious Art Deco building hosted the annual Board of Directors meeting. On one side sat Renée, along with her 4 children, Patricia, Catherine, Jean-Charles, and Agnès. They held 50% of the business and were determined to keep control. Opposing them was Jean-Dominique Frattoni, a wealthy entrepreneur known as the Napoleon of gaming. Frattoni was a shady figure with ties to the mafia and a close relationship with the corrupt mayor of town, Jacques Médecin. The meeting was crucial. A vote was needed to decide whether Renée would remain as CEO. Frattoni had long been trying to take over the casino and aimed to exile the Le Roux family and turn it into a more profitable venture. As the votes were cast, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. Renée voted for herself, supported by her 2 daughters and son. Then it was Agnès' turn. She looked to her lover, Maurice Agnelet, who had been Renée's lawyer and had become her confidant. He gave her a subtle nod, and in a shocking moment, Agnès voted against her mother. The room fell silent. With that single vote, she had betrayed her family and allowed Frattoni to gain control of the casino. Just weeks earlier, Agnès had deposited the money from Frattoni into a Swiss bank account and had given Agnelet full control over it. She was deeply in love with him and believed that this financial move might draw them closer together. Agnès recognized that the financial struggles of Maurice posed a barrier to their relationship. She was eager to sell her shares in the family casino and believed this would somehow bridge the gap. Even after taking that step, she recognized that it hadn't altered the dynamics between them. She thought that was what he needed, but even becoming an annuitant wasn't enough for him. An annuitant is a person who receives regular payments from an annuity, which is a financial product that provides income, usually after retirement. In simpler terms, it's someone who gets money regularly from an investment or insurance plan. The emotional strain became evident in her recorded phone conversations with Agnelet, which revealed her growing despair. She was confused and heartbroken and felt trapped in a toxic relationship. Agnès disappeared during the All Saints' Day weekend in 1977 and was masked in mystery. Investigators and the prosecution estimated she vanished between October 26th and November 2nd, but there was a frustrating vagueness to these dates. There was more than one reason for this uncertainty. Her family didn't report her missing until February 1978, a full 4-month period after she was last seen. This delay made it incredibly challenging for investigators, especially since the first 24 hours are crucial in any disappearance case. The timing of the report posed a significant issue. With 4 months gone by, the memories of those closest to Agnès became less reliable. For instance, her mother initially thought their last conversation was on October 27th, but then corrected herself to October 26th. Such discrepancies highlight how time can blur the details and make it harder for investigators to piece together what really happened. So why did it take so long for the police to be notified? Several factors played a role. First and foremost, Agnès was known for her unpredictable nature. It wasn't unusual for her to leave on spontaneous trips without telling anyone. Her family was used to her impulsive nature, so they didn't panic when she fell silent. Secondly, the family dynamic was strained at the time because of her vote against her mother. Agnès had distanced herself from her relatives and wasn't in regular contact with them, although they were worried because of their troubled relationship, but her silence was somewhat expected. It was hardly surprising that Agnès ignored multiple calls from her mother. Adding to this complexity was the era itself. The 1970s lacked the instant communication we have today. Mobile phones were non-existent, and keeping in touch while traveling was far less common. People weren't used to checking in regularly, especially if they were away. Maurice Agnelet also contributed to the delay. He reassured her family when they reached out to him and insisted that Agnès was likely partying somewhere. He portrayed her as imaginative and spontaneous and led them to believe that her silence was normal behavior. This false sense of security further delayed any serious concern. The attitude of Agnelet during this time was also puzzling. He had previously directed emergency services to false addresses during the suicide attempts of Agnès, which raised eyebrows about his intentions. After Agnès left the hospital, he talked to her family about a trip to Italy for All Saints' Day weekend and got her car insured for the trip. Yet, after October 26th, she lost contact with everyone. When November 4th arrived, Agnès was supposed to attend an important board meeting at the Palais. Her absence didn't just raise eyebrows, but it also sparked alarm. Everyone expected her to be there, and when she wasn't, it signaled that something was seriously wrong. This absence was a turning point in the story, and finally suggested Agnès was trapped somewhere. All these factors combined and left her in a highly vulnerable state. As Christmas approached, the worry even intensified. Agnès' family had always celebrated the holiday together, and her disappearance was disturbing. On February 13th, 1978, Agnès Le Roux finally took the step to file a complaint for her daughter's arbitrary confinement. This changed the feeling from just worry to a sense of urgency. It means being held unlawfully without good reason. The investigation faced many challenges, not only due to the delay in reporting her absence, but also because of the web of influences that surrounded her life. As time passed, the truth became harder to find, and Agnès' story became a story of how misunderstandings and emotional chaos can lead to devastating consequences. The mystery of Agnès Le Roux's disappearance took a dark turn, with talk of suicide. However, investigators found it hard to swallow the suicide theory. Why? Simply put, because Agnès' body was never found, and her car, a Range Rover, had vanished without a trace. They knew they couldn't rule out any possibilities, so they kept their minds open to all sorts of theories. One theory suggested that Agnès might have chosen to disappear on her own. As we mentioned previously, she had a rebellious nature and was known for her unpredictability. However, her family and friends found it hard to believe she would do this. Agnès was particularly close to her brother, Jean-Charles, and they often confided in each other. It seemed unlikely that she wouldn't reach out to him at some point. Plus, she had local projects she was excited about, and her business was successful. Leaving all that behind, especially after what she'd done to her family, seemed out of character. As the investigation extended, the backdrop of casino wars emerged. Agnès, as a wealthy heiress, could have become a target for local mafia interests, especially given her family's position as a hurdle to the plans of Jean-Dominique Frattoni, the casino manager who was working with the mayor of Nice to transform the city into a gambling hotspot. Yet, without concrete evidence, this theory didn't hold much water either. Besides, the disappearance of Agnès was a setback for Frattoni, and again, he needed her vote to push his plans forward. Then there was Agnès' mother, Agnès Le Roux. Some speculated that she might have wanted to get rid of her daughter after the betrayal. Agnès had fought hard to maintain control of the Palais and had resisted numerous threats from rivals. But investigators were skeptical. Why would she file a missing persons report and actively seek her daughter if she was somehow involved in her disappearance? This left one major suspect, who was Maurice Agnelet, Agnès' lover. He had both a financial motive and a possible desire for revenge. Earlier in the year, Agnès had refused to hand over control of the casino to him, and he was reportedly heard saying, "I'll get even." For investigators, Agnelet quickly became the prime suspect. Before Agnès Le Roux disappeared, Maurice Agnelet had started transferring the funds she received from Frattoni to an account in his name. Shortly after her disappearance, he withdrew a large sum of money from their shared Swiss account, which was completely emptied by February 1978. As the investigation continued, Agnelet was placed in police custody for 48 hours in September 1978. He denied any wrongdoing, but admitted to having had an affair with Agnès. About 2 weeks later, the police finally searched Agnès' home in Monaco. What they found was unusual. Mail had piled up outside the door, and there was a disturbing stillness inside. But one particular discovery stood out, which was a piece of paper pinned to a drawing table that looked like a farewell note. "Sorry, my journey is over. I'm stopping here. Everything's fine. Agnès, I want Maurice to take care of everything." What raised eyebrows was the date on the top of the note, because it was dated October 6th, weeks before Agnès went missing. How did Maurice get a hold of that note? Was it possible he staged the scene to make it look like she had taken her own life? This note only deepened the mystery surrounding Agnès' disappearance. What journey was she referring to? Why was she saying everything was fine when it clearly wasn't? And why did she want Agnelet to take care of everything? These questions remained, which left investigators and family members facing a haunting uncertainty. The judge in charge of the case was clearly disturbed by Agnelet's attitude. He pointedly remarked, "You're the only one who isn't trying to find out what happened to Agnès." That was a strong accusation, and it made Agnelet look all the more suspicious. In December 1978, Agnelet was struck off the bar after being found guilty of serious violations related to the financial aspects of the case. On the criminal front, Maurice Agnelet was still considered innocent under the law. By the end of the 1980s, he had completed his sentence for having seized Agnès' money and moved to Panama to live with his son, Guillaume. In August 1983, an international wanted notice was issued for Maurice Agnelet, who faced charges of homicide and breach of trust. After living in Canada since 1980, he returned to France on August 8, 1983, where he was arrested at airport and subsequently imprisoned. In 1983, Agnelet married his former mistress, Françoise Lausseure. In France, a spouse of a suspect cannot be compelled to testify against them, which means they can lie during a trial without facing prosecution. This rule has since been extended to cohabitants, but at that time, marriage was necessary. Therefore, Agnelet had a strong incentive to marry Lausseure, to ensure she wouldn't feel pressured to admit any false testimony. It's clear that Maurice Agnelet was an ambitious man who was willing to do whatever it took to succeed and rise socially. Those who knew him noted this trait. On October 7, 1983, the criminal charges were dropped due to an alibi provided by his second wife, Françoise Lausseure, which led to his release on February 17, 1984. She confirmed his alibi and stated that he had been with her in Geneva from October 27 to 28, just after the last known contact with Agnès. They allegedly stayed together at the Hôtel de la Paix on the shores of Lake Geneva. This complicated things for investigators, as they had to sort through various timelines and alibis. But this was the same thing that helped Agnelet to get released. During this time, his involvement in Freemasonry also came to light. Freemasonry is a fraternal organization that promotes moral and ethical development among its members, often using symbols and rituals. Agnelet was the worshipful master of a lodge he founded in Nice, which was linked to the Grand Orient of France, one of the largest Masonic organizations country. This connection raised questions about his character and motivations regarding Agnès' disappearance. His leadership in a Masonic lodge and his legal troubles suggested a potential for deceitfulness and self-interest. On September 30, 1985, he was cleared of some charges, but on November 13, 1986, the Lyon Court of Appeal sentenced him to 30 months in prison and 6 months of which were suspended for breach of trust and vote buying. He began serving his sentence on November 17, 1986, and was imprisoned until 1988. As the years passed, a breakthrough occurred in 1993 when a private detective hired by Agnès Le Roux discovered that hotel records in Geneva only listed Françoise Lausseure, not Maurice. This raised the question, why hadn't investigators found this detail sooner? If they had, the outcome of the investigation might have been very different, and Agnelet could have remained imprisoned. Agnès Le Roux had filed a complaint against Lausseure and Agnelet in 1997. In June 1999, Françoise Lausseure, now the ex-wife of Maurice Agnelet, faced potential charges of collaboration in concealing a body. Overwhelmed by the situation, Lausseure has withdrawn her previous statements and claims she had lied about the location of Agnelet during Agnès Le Roux's disappearance. In early 2000, after learning this new information, Judge Anne Vella reopened the investigation. Agnelet returned from Panama voluntarily, was placed under judicial supervision, and faced charges of voluntary manslaughter and false imprisonment. Throughout the process, he remained free while Judge Vella worked hard on the case and conducted thorough research and interviews. This backdrop of manipulation and deceit is further illuminated by the insights of Alain Mergui, the psychologist who evaluated Agnelet in 2002, who described him as an indecisive man with a limitless desire to dominate others and driven by a deep need for recognition that may stem from a troubled relationship with his father. This theory suggested that his coldness and tendency to manipulate others stemmed from deeper issues. On December 7, 2000, Judge Anne Vella reopened the case, which resulted in Agnelet being charged with murder. In March 2004, the charges were upgraded to murder. Agnelet's trial began on November 23, 2006, in the Alpes Maritimes Court. The jury found him not guilty on December 20, 2006, because they had doubts about his guilt, which led his prosecution to appeal the verdict.
Pour moi, et à mon sens pour tous ceux qui ont suivi le procès depuis son premier jour, ce procès a été particulièrement riche, si j'osais dire vivant, nous a apporté chaque jour.
Agnès Le Roux was officially declared dead on April 12, 2007, with her death certificate issued on October 26, 1977, in Nice. However, he was discharged due to a lack of evidence, which included no body or car. The prosecution appealed, which led to a new trial in 2007 in Aix-en-Provence. In 2009, Agnelet and his defense sought to overturn this decision at the European Court of Human Rights, and in 2010, he requested conditional release. Meanwhile, questionable reports appeared which linking deceased gangsters to Agnès' disappearance. In March 2011, Jean-Pierre Hernandez, a former gangster, claimed Agnelet was innocent and named Jeannot Lucchesi, a criminal tied to the Marseille mob, as the real murderer. Lucchesi allegedly told Hernandez before his death in 1987 that he had killed Agnès as part of a contract and disposed of her body in the harbors, and crushed her car afterward. After this revelation, the lawyer for the Zampa family filed a complaint against Hernandez for defaming a deceased person and accused him of harming the reputation of Zampa. The Le Roux family thought this was a publicity stunt to promote Hernandez's book, while Agnelet's lawyers saw it as new evidence to appeal to the Court of Cassation. On January 10, 2013, the European Court of Human Rights ruled against France and stated that the murder charge was not clearly established due to the lack of a body and that the Aix-en-Provence verdict lacked justification. On January 31, 2013, the Court of Cassation ordered a third trial and Agnelet was released on February 1, 2013.
Son personnage, il a 76 ans, il est accusé dans un box de cour d'assises, acculé dans une position défensive. Moi qui suis son avocat, Je suis à son écoute, je soutiens sa position, mais j'entends ce qui se dit dans le prétoire.
In March 2014, the court in Rennes held a third trial of Agnelet, which led to shocking developments that no one saw coming. On the day of trial, Maurice Agnelet appeared weak and aged in court for his trial. At first, it seemed like the proceedings would follow a familiar pattern, as Agnelet had been tried before. But just days before the verdict, a shocking twist occurred. His son, Guillaume Agnelet, accused his father of murder.
Il y a quelques années, son fils aîné, qu'il avait pourtant toujours soutenu, est venu affirmer que son père était bien l'assassin. Aujourd'hui,
During the proceedings, testimonies from her family revealed Agnès' rebellious and generous nature, while Agnelet insisted she was not a traitor. At 76, Agnelet suddenly defended Agnès, and he stated that there was no betrayal when she voted against her mother for the casino's presidency. Maurice Agnelet and his son, Guillaume, had a complicated relationship. Until the 2014 trial, Guillaume had always publicly supported his father, but this changed dramatically during the court proceedings. His unexpected accusation that Maurice had confessed to murdering Agnès Le Roux sent shockwaves through the courtroom. On April 6th, Guillaume made his astonishing claim, stating, "I have a case of conscience. I believe my father is the murderer of Agnès Le Roux." This statement was read at the opening of the hearing, and Guillaume repeated it during a video conference with the court. Guillaume Agnelet claimed that his father confessed to the crime. He said his father shot the 29-year-old woman while she slept in Monte Cassino, Italy. Afterward, he reportedly threw her belongings in a river and left her body in a forest. Then, he parked Agnès' white Range Rover at a train station with the keys left inside and took a train back to Nice. On April 9, 2014, Annie Leitis emailed their son, Guillaume, which hinted at a suicide threat. In court, she disowned him and denied his accusations against Maurice. On April 11th, the jury upheld Maurice Agnelet's 20-year prison sentence, which he appealed the next day. On July 8, 2015, the Court of Cassation rejected his appeal, which made the conviction final. In May 2015, the Le Roux family received €3 million from Agnès' inheritance. René Le Roux passed away on June 6, 2016. In September 2020, Agnelet was granted a medical suspension of his sentence, but he faced delays due to Agnès' prosecution appeal. He was released early on December 24, 2020, and moved in with his son in New Caledonia. Agnelet died from a heart attack on January 12, 2021 at age 82. For 45 years, both families endured intense scrutiny and suffering, with the truth about Agnès' disappearance still unresolved.